to go cut me some pieces. The spring eye on this and getting the bushings in it, they weren't too hard to start in there, and I just whacked them with the big hammer, but they're not all the way in. And so what I've run into is they're sticking out a little bit, and I want to try and push them together. I could do it in a press, but I don't know if it's really worth wrestling this big old spring around. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take a C-clamp and a couple pieces of metal that are big enough to fit over this, and I'm going to try and push it in with the C-clamp. I think that'll work. We're going to try it. But I went to go use my portaband saw here, and it wouldn't work. And so I ran over here to this cord, because I know this cord's good, and I tried it here, it still didn't work. Well, then I started looking, and what I got is it's cut. What happened is I have a habit of leaving it sitting on the vise over there because that's where I use it a lot, and it fell off the vise. It drug itself out of the wall, it drug down the grinders and everything else is plugged in over there, and just kind of made a heck of a mess. But I guess when it fell, it got cut as well. So it was a good thing I didn't reach down there and get a hold of it when it was plugged in. But now it's unplugged. I'm going to fix this cord up. I got the hardware around here somewhere. Let me see here. I just had it. There it is. We got some good old black tape and a box cutter, and I can splice these back together nicely. Boy, that's the dullest box cutter on the face of the planet. I always prefer a good razor blade. I was an electrician for quite a while, and I like razor knives, and box cutters are a little bit of a pain in the butt, but in a pinch it works. Trick is cut the jacket without cutting too much, and then we'll see how bad they're cut. I know the black wire, which is the line wire, is cut all the way through. I can see that already. It's sticking right here. The white one's hit, and the green one's hit, which is the neutral and the ground. I don't know how bad yet, but we're gonna peel this jacket back a little ways on both sides, carefully not to nick the wires inside, because then we'll have to fix that. And go in, and a lot of times you can just score the jacket and not cut all the way through it, and then it will break, but it's not doing it. So I'll cut it. I just have to be careful. There we go. And then any of the white cotton strength strands, we can just trim them off too. They don't need to be in there, at least not for right here. And then I'll cut the other side back as well. I'm probably cutting it back 2 inches or so, and it gives me a little bit of room to run tape. It's probably back a little further than most people would cut it, but it's more convenience than it is anything else, really. I do like the box cutters because they're less likely to have a big old bunch of blade hanging out there. Well, they're not less likely. They do have less blade hanging out there, but they're less likely to cut you. They're sharp on the one end, but that's all it is, and that's good because that's really all we need it to be, is sharp on that end. You know, sharp along the way of a whole length of a blade is all right, but it's a whole lot of unused stuff because we're not cutting anything thick or deep. So I like razor knives, box cutters, that sort of deal for stripping wire and electrical stuff. There is some fancy stuff that they make. I have them, different wire stripping stuff, and it does work. But let's see here. So that one's just nicked in the jacket. This one has a few strands that are hit, but it's not too bad. As you can see, there's just a few strands sticking out of there. It's not cut badly at all. So them two will just get taped up, and then we're going to butt splice this thing back together and put it back together. Now there are guys that run around with them solder sticks, and they do seem to be pretty handy, but I've never really used them. I've just done the same thing I've done forever, and it works. It makes it happen. You could wire nut this, but the thing about wire nuts are basically, you know, they take up some room, and I don't want to have a big knot of wire, so this butt splice will take care of what I need and keep the length. You know, if I was to wire nut that together, I'd have this big knot of wire right here that I'd have to deal with. And anybody that knows me as an electrician knows that I'm not very good at like making my wires the right length on my splices. When I was in mining, I was fairly famous for not being able to do that. But my small wiring stuff like this, I'm pretty particular about, and I'm pretty good at it. Like big wiring and minor cables and shuttle car cables and stuff. I was fairly horrible at doing splices in them. I mean, they were always there, they were always strong, but they were never very pretty. I tried a handful of different techniques that everybody proposed, and I don't know, I never really got good at it. But on the other hand, it really never interested me that much to get good at it, just doing splices. When I do wiring and stuff, it's important to have it done very nicely, because one, it's a safety issue, and two, it's a sense of pride. I mean, you get into a vehicle or a piece of equipment or whatever, and you see a bunch of really ratty wires, and you know, do you really want your name attached to that? And do you really want it burning down your vehicle? So, as we've done here, we got this. You know, when you see them, they're all twisted up and nice and pretty. And we can actually twist these ends as well. I've untwisted them and got them all to where they're lined up now. And so what we'll do is we'll strip this other side. My strippers ran off two on the ground. We'll splice it together. I do have a Greenlee set of crimpers here that's extremely nice. A good set of crimpers is kind of a must-have, because you know, your splice is only as good as your crimp, and if your crimp's done right, then it will last a very long time. That's why the solder stick things work pretty good, because they just solder them together. The only problem I don't like about solder is if your joint ever got hot, it would melt the solder, create a worse connection, that sort of deal. And you're going to tell me that, you know, that's probably the least of my worries, if that splice ever got warm. So what you see here is everything's nice in line. They're pretty dang close to the right size. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to twist this thing up. That's going to help take any differences in the length of the wire out of it, and see how nicely it tucks in. So I'm going to use that to hold it tight, and maybe I'll use it to go the other way. I'll tuck that into a frame hole to hold it tight, which is really nice to be able to do. And I'll lay it across the string, or the spring, and I'll put this thing between my legs, because it's handy. And I'm going to build this thing back up to the factory level of insulation. This will be stiffer than the factory insulation, but it'll be a very good splice and connection when we're done. You want to make sure to wrap the tape really tight. You don't want any air gaps in the tape. This is cheap tape. You buy some Scotch 33, and it's really good tape, and it will stretch a long ways. I've been through presentations and reps with Scotch, and they build a very quality piece of tape, and they're designed to stretch. No matter how much you elongate it, it does not lose the insulating capabilities until you pull it to where it's broke, which is pretty handy. So what I'm doing now is just building up the diameter so that it's the same, roughly the same diameter and the same amount of protection as the rest of the jacket. And it takes usually quite a bit of tape, especially since we're running, you know, a length that's, you know, 5 inches. And so once I get close to the amount of tape, or the thickness that the cord should be, then I'll start going over the edges. And the reason I do that is so that you have a taped up area that is really not any bigger than the area that the insulation there is. As you can see, it's fairly close. It does taper down just a little bit on the ends, and it will, because we haven't wrapped the multiple layers all the way to the ends. So we're going to go back on here. I usually go about 2 widths of tape back onto the insulation that we didn't cut, and then we'll go back up and go all the way down and try and make it uniform. Try and make your wraps the same distance, usually about half the roll. I'm actually going less than that because I want to build. So each layer, there's probably like 6 layers here because I'm not moving forward very fast. And so I want to build it, but I don't want it too big. That's about the max I want to build it. I want to try and keep it as even as possible. And so where it's smaller, I'll slow up and I'll wrap more while still moving forward. If you start wrapping in the same spot, it's going to create a step. And you don't want that, especially on a cord for a piece of, a drill or a sawzall or any of that stuff, because you don't want to get caught on stuff. You want it nice and smooth, and you don't want it too big, you don't want it too small. And so you want to try and keep it as good as possible. So the transition, I try and keep track of it because you can kind of lose it a little bit, is right here. So I'm about 2 widths over. So then I'll go right back up here for a minute just to build it up to where it's the same thickness real quick. And then pull it off tight. It's nice, it's tight. It's a little thicker than the cord, but it's not jagged. There's no loose edges to catch on stuff. We can drag it around. It should work good. So now we'll test it, make sure it works. It should. I don't see any other bad spots in the cord. That works great. So I guess that's my tutorial today on how to splice a cord, because I'm stupid and I drop stuff, I don't put stuff away.